Chess computers experienced a revolution in late 2017 when Google's DeepMind created AlphaZero. AlphaZero defeated Stockfish in a 100-game match with 28 wins and 72 draws, and then there was a rematch the following year in 2018. The final scoreline of that match was 155 wins for AlphaZero and 6 for Stockfish. And when I made this video about it a few days ago, a lot of the comments were like, wait, so can we see the 6 times that Stockfish actually beat AlphaZero? And that's what I'm showing you in this video. But this is where it gets a little bit confusing. If you go on chessgames.com and find the Stockfish AlphaZero match from 2018, there's like 10 wins for Stockfish. So I don't exactly know which of those games are from the match and which are from practice games, but I chose 6 of the most interesting ones that I can show you. And the last game of today is gonna be Stockfish standing up to its bully. Timestamps are on the video player, let's get into it. So part of the match between Stockfish and AlphaZero was the fact that they needed to play positions that had been recorded in the opening database, right? And so in this first game, we have a Sicilian defense, we have an open Sicilian with d4, trade, and now black has a choice of moves and plays g6. If you left AlphaZero to just run, AlphaZero would not play the dragon, okay? It would play the knight, or it would play other Sicilian defenses, or it would play e4, e5. But both of the computer sides had to do this. There was some even really nice games where AlphaZero beat Stockfish, and I'm not sitting here complaining or anything. That was just the agreement. Now, this variation of the dragon that we have is one where the players castle on opposite sides, or in this case, I should say bots. They castle on opposite sides, and then ultimately white will go for an attack, and black will go for an attack all the same. Now, if you haven't seen my video, AlphaZero crushing Stockfish, I will tell you now that AlphaZero really likes dynamics. It will oftentimes sacrifice material, whether attacking or defending, to open up the mobility of its position. So first of all, it forces Stockfish to trade light squared bishop for knight. Now this rook is planted, and now the next phase of the attack is coming. What I noticed in studying these games is that a lot of this from Stockfish's side is like dealing with a belligerent drunk person. Like AlphaZero will stop at nothing to launch an attack, and oftentimes it will realize that it actually has nothing going for it. For example, you'll notice that in this position, it's lined up 2 rooks, it's lined up a bishop, it's lined up the queen on a5, but because it already has the hindrance of the opening being slightly subpar, meaning the dragon for computers is slightly subpar, it's actually very much white who is still threatening to infiltrate by using the pawn break on the h-file. AlphaZero has these rooks stacked, but there's really nothing there. And so now we have a trade. I've removed your bishop, and look, you see it's kind of like trying to sacrifice material. In this case, queen d6 loses to a backwards knight move, and then, for example, queen to e5 with some checkmate ideas with this bishop. Like if you go all the way back here, or if you don't, then I will play bishop e5 and I will win your knight. So AlphaZero is always on the lookout for a way to sacrifice material. You see it's coming forward like full force, but Stockfish is just sharp enough, and then here lands a very nice move. You can feel free to pause and try to find the Stockfish move, preferably without using Stockfish. That move is the hammer, rook takes h7. Oftentimes when you're about to launch an attack, you should just look for the most flashy way to get it. It doesn't mean you have to play it. In this case, though, sacrificing the rook is game over because you can't take it. If you take it, I play rook h1. You can only go here. I take your bishop. You're going to lose. But again, AlphaZero likes this because it thinks somewhere in its head that it's sacrificing a lot of pawns, or in this case, it's going to get back a bishop, and now it's going to sacrifice a third pawn, and somehow it's going to survive. Like you cannot take the rook, but Stockfish just pushes forward. It keeps its king protected. The bishop is not activated. Like again, there's moments you're expecting this move d3 to activate the bishop in the corner, and remember what I said about the move d3. It happens in this position. AlphaZero plays the move d3, and it plays this move because again, AlphaZero is all about activity. The king has no squares here to mobilize. Black's king does have a little bit of squares, and so AlphaZero looks to get a queen trade going. But the problem is, like I said, it's kind of like holding off a drunk person. Now you have AlphaZero down 5 pawns for that bishop in the corner, And here Stockfish begins the ever slow, just process of just very slowly, methodically removing every final piece that AlphaZero has. And ultimately the game is decided by an infiltration of the rook. The queen is booted out, the king is safeguarded, and you pick up the final pawn. And this endgame is very easily winning for computers. It takes, I mean, it's never super easy against AlphaZero, but if you notice, Stockfish just pushes its pawns, and it was on move 71 that AlphaZero resigned because you're just, I mean, there's mate coming or you're going to promote the pawn. So even with the nerfing of a really, really bad opening for computers, it still took Stockfish a monumental effort in dealing with the belligerence and sacrificial active nature of AlphaZero to finally outplay it by utilizing an attack to transition into an endgame with a balance of 5 pawns for a bishop. Let's go to game number 2. Okay, so game 2 is more of the same. The players were instructed to play the semi-Slav variation, or the computers were instructed, and the semi-Slav is very good. It's actually significantly better of an opening than the dragon, especially at computer level. By the way, if you play the dragon, keep playing the dragon. You are not anywhere near as strong as these computers. In fact, you and me combined are probably nowhere near as strong as these computers, but let's go g4, okay? So this is exciting. This is, was this still in their book? Yes, it was. So I believe that they were instructed to play this line where white gambits the g-pawn, and then you can, you know, attack on the g-file. This is kind of known as the Shabalov attack, the Shirov-Shabalov variation of the semi-Slav. You'll notice that AlphaZero plays bishop d6 and then bishop b4, which is very peculiar, but is totally a thing. And we have knight e4, long castle, short castle, bishop e1. Okay. Again, opposite side castling, this time totally not a dragon, and Stockfish brings back its bishops to trade the knight in the center, and then, you know, attack on the diagonal, and here we go, we're rolling. Okay, great. b5. AlphaZero does not even hesitate to sacrifice a pawn to get things rolling. That is a free pawn, and it's totally playable for white, but you will need to deal with this. And rather than letting AlphaZero do that again, Stockfish closes the position, and here comes AlphaZero, always finding a way to look for an attack, and f5. Doesn't matter which side of the board, it will thrust pawns. It will thrust pawns. Now you play knight h2. Knight h2 is a fascinating move because this knight actually has nowhere to go. So, if you notice, this knight has no moves. Can't move anywhere. And so Stockfish just decides to trap it. And AlphaZero goes, okay, you can waste time trapping my knight. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. I'm going to sacrifice. And I'm not even going to take back that pawn. I'm going to play rook to b8. With the idea to play like knight c5, a4, knight c5, a4, b3. So Stockfish deals with that by playing b3 itself. But that invites a4. And now Stockfish has to run over here, deal with the imminent danger of just getting slaughtered on the a file, right? So AlphaZero sacrifices a piece and just has 2 pawns for it now. Goes back and sacrifices a pawn. And then stabilizes. This is the thing about AlphaZero. It'll give away a pawn and just play a stabilizing move. But sometimes it'll misevaluate the sacrifice of a certain pawn and allow kind of long-term play. So Stockfish brings both rooks to the middle. AlphaZero continues. Like, AlphaZero is not playing like it's down a piece. AlphaZero is playing like it's up a piece. It's just giving all its pawns away. Just, you don't do that, okay? You don't do that and then complain that, oh, I was trying to emulate the computer. Like, look, I mean, AlphaZero's just got every single piece activated. This queen, if it could come over here, it would be game over. So now Stockfish begins the nerfing process. It starts to take pieces away and goes bishop b5, and a few moves later plays bishop a4, gluing the position shut, desperately trying to defend itself against the Titan overlords. And by the way, this whole game, Stockfish is playing without this knight. That's the thing about AlphaZero's playing style. But AlphaZero sometimes has no chill to a fault. Okay, it doesn't know how to say, you know what, probably the best thing in this game is just going to be to make a draw. It put all of its pieces on decent squares, but the problem is that white just was able to stabilize. Like, you know, white's next move is going to be probably f4, getting the knight out, or just knight g4 right away, because there's a pin on this pawn. And if you go back a few moves, actually, well, my browser-based Stockfish likes AlphaZero's position. It actually believes in the position around here. It thinks that there's chances. Of course, it's a joke because this computer that they're playing with is significantly stronger, but it's wild. Like some of the moves that AlphaZero plays, engines don't even see. It doesn't even see it. It needs time to be convinced of it. And so here's a second game that Stockfish dealt with this just feral assault. And even though Stockfish is winning these games, in some ways it's more interesting still to see the way AlphaZero plays and how it sometimes misevaluates. Let's go to game number 3. So in this game, we have a Queen's Gambit, but Knight C6. Knight C6 is not a bad move, but for the strongest computers in the world, it's not a very good move. There are a lot better options. Let's put it this way. It's a bad move given the alternatives. It's known as the Chigorin defense, but it's actually a very, very decent weapon. I've played it myself with black. And the point is that black just goes all in and assaults the center and basically gets a position where you have 2 bishops versus 2 knights. White has this plot of pawns, kind of everybody capturing toward the middle, and you try to expand. And essentially the opening position that you get is one where black controls the center, castles, and tries to move down the middle of the board. Now, AlphaZero is faced with a pawn attack, right? So obviously it gives the pawn away because it wants to win some time. Now Stockfish has to waste a little bit of time getting out, and AlphaZero has officially activated all of its pieces. The problem is that knights are inherently not very mobile, and by the way, you leave a supercomputer on its own, it will play the move h4. By the way, if you ask me what the hell the point of the move h4 is, I can try to find an answer. I think the point is h5 to prevent knight to g6. The knight on f5 carries a lot less pressure for the center, and if you play h5, e4, d5, this knight will never get out because it will not be able to go to any of those squares. Which is actually why AlphaZero very confidently just smacks out the move h5, because you want to be able to move your knight. Now we kick out the queen, now we double on the b file. You'll notice Stockfish just hasn't even moved anything. And because it's terrified. Stockfish is absolutely terrified of what's coming. AlphaZero has smacked it enough times. Now we play king f1 to try to move the rook on the g file. And kind of in a rare turn of events, AlphaZero actually engages some trades to... I suppose in this case, if you were to take and just cocoon with like bishop e1, there's no imminent danger, but I guess AlphaZero just evaluates that the rook is extremely powerful here. Despite being potentially down material. Now, Stockfish begins the closing up process. It starts to close the center, and the evaluation starts to build, but as the position gets advanced more for white, AlphaZero begins saying, well, these are weaknesses. Like, I'm going to target your weaknesses, and I'm going to try to break up your center with moves like c6, and you can't take me because I have this beautiful shot. You can't take my queen. So that forces Stockfish to continue to push forward, and that very well might be the best thing to do, because sometimes the only way to refute is to play the most aggressive thing, and so it starts to do that. And then as the game progresses, well, AlphaZero just, of course, in its usual way, being down a pawn or two, now equal in pawns, but hunts Stockfish's king. It hunts the king down. But here's the problem. Pawn majority in the center and 2 bishops versus 2 knights is always going to be better for the player with the 2 bishops. And like I said, this is how Stockfish dealt with AlphaZero. It just braced for dear life. The king is in the middle. I'm going to push my pawn. You can take it, but now I have this very strong move, bishop c2. Your king cannot escape. I've got back rank threats. All your pieces are out and about, but none of them can get to my king. My king is safe on f1. It doesn't look very safe, but I promise you it is. And now I'm going to take this into an endgame. I don't care if we trade pieces. You're threatening my bishop, but the more pieces we trade, I'm happy because I have the outside pass pawn. And now, watch as Stockfish very confidently marches its king to the middle, dealing with the knights, keeps its bishop safe, tries to engage in trades, like tries to trade its bishop for a knight, and the endgame will be decided by that outside pass pawn. And that is exactly what we get. We have a position with rook bishop 2 versus rook knight 1, and it doesn't matter how good the outcomputer is tactically, because this endgame will be winning, and Stockfish advances and ultimately wins on move 77 because the king is coming in to outflank. Like you just, for example, let's say king g7, I play king h5, you say, okay, king h7, you can't come in. I say, okay, great. You're going to lose your knight. And you say, well, I'm not going to lose my knight. I say, okay, great. I'm going to play king h6, king h7, and you're going to run out of moves. So that's 3 games now that we see Stockfish doing this, kind of zapping, nerfing, slowly chipping away. But this next one is pretty funny. Game number 4 is the only win I could find where Stockfish played with the black pieces. And I'm actually not even gonna like really focus too much on the analysis of this game. You'll be like, what? How dare you? Well, here's the thing. We have like a Queen's Gambit declined, exchange variation, very solid system. Stockfish doing its thing, plays this knight e4 little trick, bishop comes back. You say, Levy, I am here for chess analysis. I am not here for you to blast through the moves. Look, I know. It's a positional game. Stockfish trades a knight for a bishop. It traded its knight, it got a light squared bishop. It blocks up the center of the board. We trade bishops. This game was just uber solid because, as you will begin to notice, the computers start to trade all their pieces. So we have queen, 2 knights, queen, knight, bishop. Completely symmetrical structure. In fact, this continues to be the case for a very long time. Okay, like it's just, like this knight is trying to come in, it can't, but this queen can't do damage by itself. It's not, you know, it's not going to work because I guard everything. This is known as a fortress. This is a defensive fortress by black. You will hear people use that term. Now, you will also hear people say that computers don't really like fortresses, and some of them don't even understand them, meaning that if they have a way to continue the game, they will. And so AlphaZero traded queens, and then, like again, this is a complete fortress. This is a draw. Any human will agree to a draw here. But AlphaZero started pushing its pawns, which was fine, and then AlphaZero just wouldn't accept the draw. I was not joking in the intro of this video when I said that AlphaZero is kind of like a belligerent drunk, and at some point you just gotta give it a smack. AlphaZero even managed to promote a queen in this game, and must have thought that since Stockfish is a move away from promoting, that it was winning, but it's not. There's no way to stop promotion. There's just no way. The king is too close. And ultimately, both sides got a queen. This game went on for another 20 moves, and we ended up in an endgame with queens and pawns where black has more pawns than white. So, I don't really know if this is impressive on Stockfish's part, or if AlphaZero is just a lunatic. I mean, if you beat somebody 150 times to 0, you probably also will not give them any draws. This part of the video, if you made it to game number 4, is honestly just comedy. This is one of those wins that Stockfish beat, and it's the only one with black. So, take it for what you will, have a laugh, but don't go anywhere because we got really good games coming up. Our penultimate game by Stockfish versus AlphaZero is the Grunfeld defense, a favorite of all super grandmasters, taught in every single school, including the Russian school. Queen b3 is actually known as the Russian system. The point is that you actually bring your queen out and deflect black's d pawn off the center, and then you take the full center. Great. I know these lines with white very well, and the whole point is to play bishop g4, pressuring the knight, and then rotate back to d7. There's a lot of ways to play this position. Knight a6 is the very trendy modern main line. There's a lot of situations you play c5, to sacrifice a pawn. Actually, quite surprisingly, AlphaZero plays c6. I would have thought that AlphaZero would much prefer to sacrifice pawns. But okay, b5 and bishop e3, d5. You are engaging with a psycho. What is that psycho going to do? Okay, bishop f5 is not complex. One pawn gone. Yeah, I mean, it would not be an AlphaZero game if you didn't just recreationally not just lose a pawn, but also trade a bishop for a knight, seemingly one of your most active pieces, increase your opponent's king mobility, not quite to these squares, that would be illegal, and remove a bishop, the main defender of your king. But AlphaZero is, well, it's AlphaZero for a reason. Knight f6, a move that literally attacks nothing. Knight to d4, going after the second bishop, and remember, we're going to start an attack. Bishop moves c4, so Stockfish glues the center shut, and now we have queen c7. And this move, I'm gonna dare say AlphaZero missed or misevaluated a move. In this position, try to find the best move for white. I'll try to think like a computer. King d2. I mean, in the middle of the damn game, you move your king to the middle of the board, and you just say a prayer, whatever religion you are a member of or lack thereof, you pray to something. And now, well, obviously, you're like, okay, I'm going to open up the center of the board. DE6, listen, what do we know about AlphaZero? When you take its pawns, it doesn't take them back. Just knight C6. Like, this thing is crazy, man. It's crazy. Queen C5, and now it takes back. Now it takes back. Because now if knight takes E6, it looks like a fork, but it's not. I'm going to play Queen D7. It's check. You have to bring your knight back, and I just don't really believe in this position. So King E1. Stockfish is setting up the pieces for the next game, and now Stockfish, again, as we have seen throughout this video, has to cocoon. It's just, you know, it's like terrified. It's like, okay, I'm better, just wait it out, just move the king around a little bit, and you'll notice that, again, like, AlphaZero is so belligerent. Every piece is flying forward at every moment. You've got to be so precise, so precise. Like, look at this, you are being swarmed, but white is better. King E3, you have to be brave, and and look at this, it's a free bishop, right? Like, it's giving you the bishop, but rook E1 is a problem. You almost made it. You have to, like, play bishop E2. So F3 to kick the bishop out, the bishop moves, and now this very nice move, H4. Trying to maybe play G3, G4, expand with space, and take away squares from the opponent. And the rest of this game is Stockfish blocking the position desperately. Now this knight and bishop are kind of repelled. Like, the knight can't come forward, the bishop is blocked. You can check me, but I will come back and attack your rook, so you actually don't achieve anything. And then AlphaZero sacked the rook for a bishop. Like, this is a crazy move. This is a crazy move. It could have played rook E1, and then, for example, like king F2, and then maybe rook back to D1 or B1, but it must have not liked something to such an extent that it just straight up traded rook for bishop, then went to give a check, then went to go rook A1. I don't know. And then again, dare I say, maybe it missed this move C5, like just the simple pawn move to try to play. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to insult the overlord. It's gonna show up at my bedside or something. Like, maybe AlphaZero got to this position and was like, well, white is playing without a bishop and a rook. I'm kind of playing without a knight, but it's gonna get back into the game. And when you look at this optically, it actually does begin to look really good for black, because okay, the knight is gonna come, you know, maybe into C3. Like, where do you move these pieces? E3 is coming, etc. The rook is hanging, but Stockfish plays rook B8. AlphaZero kicks out the rook. The knight is coming. Look at that. That was the only way. That was the only way. You needed to be so fast. If you played like rook B4, knight F5, and I don't know, bishop B5, just to develop a piece, I would have taken this pawn. I would have pushed. But look at this nice tactic. If you take this, and I'm just quick enough, and now AlphaZero does not have enough pieces, and Stockfish just nerfs its power, invests in its e-pawn, and it's actually still, for a computer, not super simple to win this position, but rook d8 and AlphaZero resigned because I guess it didn't like what was on the horizon. It would still take a human a long time to win this game. Most likely you would need to go for this pawn, but h4 is still hanging. I mean, it's a combination of pushing your e-pawn and not going into rook and bishop versus bishop knight. I actually think that white needs to keep pawns. I don't think white can just swap off every single pawn. So, yeah. But this last game, if you waited this long and made it this far in the video, this one's going to be a treat. You're going to really like this last game. This is Stockfish standing up to its bully. Okay. E4. What is the worst opening for computers to play against E4? E6. And during this match, we saw AlphaZero demolish the French, but they put the French in AlphaZero's hands thinking, let it beat up old Stockfish. The classical variation with bishop g5 and bishop e7. e5 and the knight drops back, and normally here what happens is white trades and plays f4 and big center, and black fights back with c5, a6, b5. No. No. We play the Aljochin Chataud. h4. Don't criticize my French accent. I'm here for the chess. I'm not here for the French accent. Takes, queen g5. Yes, you can have one of my pawns, but Stockfish is now channeling its inner AlphaZero. No disrespect to the Stockfish creators. Nowadays, Stockfish is much better than AlphaZero. Okay, so knight h3, queen e7, queen g4. Okay, great. I sack a pawn for activity. This is the whole point of this line. In fact, when I played this with black, I never took on g5. I never did this. But AlphaZero, the materialistic heathen, trying to say only I can sacrifice pawns, Stockfish. You can't. Look at this. I mean, look at this position. Now, knight c6, we got to develop, okay? Stockfish plays knight to b5, attacking c7. AlphaZero does not blunder that and plays the move knight b6. Rook d3. This is not getting taken because of the pin. AlphaZero needs a few more moves here to get everything consolidated. So first it plays h5 because that kind of shuts down that side of the board. Stockfish plays rook. It's like Stockfish was being run by Alexandra Botes that day or something, but it's actually not the case because after it takes, you're going to lose the queen no matter what. I have rook f7, and if queen f8, I had rook f8. So a6 to try to kick the knight out, and I just ignore you. I mean, like, that's just, you could take that. Like, go ahead. You go ahead and take my knight, because then I'm going to play rook f7. So AlphaZero says, you know what, Stockfish, you got a point. Hey, Stockfish, we're friends, right? We're friends. Yeah, Stockfish like, yeah, we cool. No, just kidding. Bishop d3, I'm coming in with knight f7 and bishop g6. So we have knight to f8. I mean, I have never seen a game where AlphaZero had all these pieces on the back rank. And here, if you'd like to find a way to tip the scale of pressure beyond the point of salvation, try to find it for white. It's an absolutely beautiful maneuver. And that maneuver is rook to h4. With the intention to play rook f4 and this. And now AlphaZero plays rook g8. And here, potentially the most savage move of the entire game. You can continue with this plan, but here, I mean, if I gave you 10 guesses, you wouldn't guess the move here. You could try. Write it on a piece of paper or something. The move in this position that Stockfish chose to stand up to its bully is one of the most savage moves I've ever seen in my life. And that move is the move bishop to c4, which looks like a mouse slip. I mean, it looks like you're watching an Eric Rosen stream and he's like, oh, what to do? And he plays, oh, no, my bishop. And the crazy thing is, Stockfish didn't even, AlphaZero didn't even take it. If you take it, the e4 square becomes a transfer point, but more importantly, d5 and d6. If you take knight d5, knight f6, it's game over. And if you don't take me, I apologize. If you don't take me, I just push through and knight e4, knight f6, and I have rook d4. And so the game ends with queen d7, knight e4. Stockfish begs AlphaZero to take it. Takes, knight h7, and now the final move of the game, rook h5. Because you cannot take me, and I'm going to take your knight and go knight f6. And, yeah, this was a very thorough beating, and I wanted to save this game for last. Now, this game says a lot more about the French defense at computer level than about Stockfish beating AlphaZero. But listen, we needed to feel as good. Oh, listen, we got to root for the underdog, okay? I mean, poor old Stockfish 8 was getting absolutely clobbered. So hopefully you enjoyed that sample size of Stockfish standing up to its AlphaZero computer bully. Now, we do have to remember that these games were played in 2018. Since then, AlphaZero has been discontinued, and a lot of effort has gone into these AI-style neural network computers. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know the terms. If anything, I'm reading them off of a second monitor before I record them on camera. There's many people involved in the world of chess, and most of them will watch the video and ultimately comment something along the lines of, you know, nowadays Stockfish NNUE or new Stockfish 13 and Leela will do some serious damage to the old AlphaZero. But this was still transcendent. AlphaZero paved the path for this kind of style of machine learning, and it was fascinating that Stockfish actually stood up to it. Now, if you made it this far in the video, I am going to tell you something crazy. There was a moment that the only way Stockfish and AlphaZero were playing on equal terms back in 2018 was if Stockfish had 10-1 time odds. If Stockfish had 10 times more on the clock than AlphaZero. Think about that, huh? That is insane. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Let me know if there's a topic or anything that I haven't covered in a video yet, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out. Get out of here.